Hi, my name is Annie, and I am a member at Good Shepherd OPC in Cincinnati, Ohio. I bake the communion bread for our church, and I wanted to share this recipe with you today because it is a very simple recipe and it's delicious, and it also happens to be gluten-free and allergy-friendly. I use 4 simple ingredients in my bread. The first one is Namaste gluten-free flour blend that I buy at Costco. The second ingredient is Earth Balance margarine, and you can find this in major grocery stores. I've seen this at Walmart, but it is widely available. The third ingredient that I use is just regular old granulated sugar, and I use salt. So, the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to put 1 cup of the gluten-free flour into the food processor. I'm going to add my sugar. I'm going to add my salt. And I'm going to put the lid on, and I'm going to put this on low for about 30 seconds to 1 minute. And this is going to act like a sifter. It's going to get all of the ingredients sifted together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get out a stick of my Earth Balance margarine. And the reason why I like to use this is because this is the exact amount that I need for my recipe. It also comes in a tub like this, and if you use the tub, you have to make sure that you measure a half a cup exactly. But this little convenience stick actually is a half a cup. So this has to be cold, and the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to open this margarine, and I'm going to slice this into about 6 pieces and put it into my dry mixture. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pulse this in my food processor until a loose dough starts to form. Okay, so I have pulsed together my dry mixture and my Earth Balance margarine, and just to give you a little bit more of a close-up, this is sort of the consistency that it should be after you're done pulsing it. As you can see in the food processor, the dough has begun to form, but it's not quite formed into a ball yet. So I'm going to take the lid off of my food processor, and I'm also going to take out the metal blade very carefully, and I'm going to pour this into a bowl, a mixing bowl. And what I'm going to do after this is in the mixing bowl, of course, is I am going to continue to press it together and form it into a ball. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to set it on top of my parchment paper like a round disc, pressing down in the middle of it while I form it around the edges with my other hand. So pressing with my right palm and forming it with my left palm. Okay, so I want this to be big enough so that it sort of just fits into my square baking pan. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take scissors and I'm going to cut the border of my parchment paper round, just so that whenever I put it into my baking dish, I don't have all this really messy parchment paper that's hanging out of the top. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a circle around the outside of my communion bread, and I'm going to leave about 1.5 inch border there. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the excess parchment paper, and I'm going to pick this bread up just like this and set it into my baking dish. Okay, so this is about 8 by 8 to 9 by 9 square baking dish, And I'm gonna bake this in a 325-degree oven for 27 minutes. So I'm gonna go pop this in the oven, excuse me. Now, just like all good cooking shows will do, I have one that is finished so that I can show you the finished result. This is what it's gonna look like after it's baked for 27 minutes exactly in a 325-degree oven. Now, this parchment paper is really gonna come in handy because you can actually just, after this is cooled completely, I have to stress that too. I'm gonna cut this after this has cooled for about 3 hours. I'm just gonna pull this out of the square baking dish and I'm gonna begin to cut it. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut a triangle in the corner of the communion bread, and it's gonna be about 1.5 inches on each side. So I'm gonna cut a triangle first, and this is actually going to be for the minister to stand up and break as he is serving communion in front of the congregation. And then I'm gonna cut the rest of it into smaller pieces to serve. So I'm gonna go ahead and start to cut the triangle. You wanna use a serrated knife whenever you do this because a blunter knife will actually break the bread, and you don't want to do that. So there's the first piece that I'm gonna cut. That's the triangle for the minister to have. And then what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna cut the rest of it into small pieces. And the way that I'm gonna do that is I'm going to take this serrated knife and very gently, using a little bit of a back and forth motion so that I don't break my bread prematurely, I am going to go ahead and cut lines into the communion bread. I'm gonna keep my pieces nice and even. So I'm gonna start cutting over here too. And then I'm going to go like this. Cut another one. Now that I've made all of these horizontal lines, I am going to go up and down with vertical lines so that I can cut smaller pieces. So this is the piece I'm gonna leave whole, and I'm gonna start here where my horizontal lines go across, or my horizontal, as they like to say. Okay, so I have finished slicing my communion bread, and it actually kind of almost looks like an American flag a little bit. We have our piece in the corner, and then we have all of these small little pieces that we're going to serve on a tray to our congregation. Now, there are probably 75 pieces of communion bread here that you can use, which is definitely big enough for our church. But if you need more than this, then I would recommend making 2 batches and baking these side by side in the oven. Okay, so the great thing about this parchment paper is that you can just lift this whole thing up when it's already cut, put it back in your dish after it's completely cooled, seal it with plastic wrap, and it will be ready to go. So I realized that I forgot to tell you the amounts of ingredients that I used in my recipe. I used 1 cup of my gluten-free flour blend. I used 1/2 cup of my Earth Balance margarine, which, as I said before, this convenient little stick is 1/2 cup. And remember, this has to be cold. I used 1/3 cup of granulated sugar and only 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And like I said, I went ahead and mixed all my dry ingredients together first in the food processor. After those were well sifted, I added my cold butter and pulsed it until it became a dough. So anyway, I hope that you try this recipe, and I hope you really enjoy it. I know that we really enjoy it at our church, and I hope you do as well. So thank you very much and have a great day.